Hello, dear viewers. My name is Aranka Ignasiak-Schulz, and I'm the head of the Center for Central and Eastern European Studies, the Vice Dean of International Relations and Development at the Faculty of Economic Sciences and Management of the Nicholas Copernicus University in Toronto. We are meeting today, a few days after the event that started, the celebration of the round anniversary of the birth of our patron, a true Renaissance scholar, Nicholas Copernicus, that was born in Torun 550 years ago. But today, on 24th of February 2023, we meet with the occasion that is rather not so joyful, as I would like to welcome you at the very special online event organized to mark the year from the beginning of the regular war in Ukraine. Some countries and institutions decided to officially mark this sad anniversary with a minute of silence. But we, the scientists and researchers affiliated with participating units of Nicholas Copernicus University, we decided that we will pay tribute to the bravery of Ukrainians and highlight our solidarity with the country that continues its courageous fight in a different way. We would like to show our personal commitment and institutional commitment, social responsibility, presenting you the impact and the timeliness of our research. As we understand that facing such unprovoked aggression and injustice, in this sense, we have to stand together, united. So we want to pay the tribute together with the Ukrainian colleagues. That is why the event is co-organized by Simon Kuznets National University of Economics in Kharkiv. There is one more co-organizer from the country that is our political ally, the United States, as we have with us the representatives of the City College of New York. The date 24th of February 2022 marked a turning point for many people, dividing their lives unlike ever before. First of all, we would like to show how the daily routine of students looks like in the times of war. The touching video you are about to see was prepared by our colleagues and students from Kharkiv.
Всім привіт! Мене звати Олексій Ярошенко, я студент-журналіст з Харкова. Сьогодні Російська Федерація випустила по Україні близько 100 ракет і вразила критичну інфраструктуру в багатьох містах по всій країні. У Харкові наразі немає світла, як і в багатьох інших містах, проте це не зупиняє нас від роботи. І я хочу показати вам, як ми продовжуємо працювати в таких умовах. Генератор, який ми вивели на вулицю, щоб нам він трохи менше заважав. Це, до речі, гуманітарна допомога, яку ми отримали, щоб роздавати по деокупованим територіям, на які ми приїжджаємо в експедиції. Тобто, окрім того, що ми знімаємо людей, ми також роздаємо їм гуманітарну допомогу. Завдяки генератору ми маємо електроживлення, яке дозволяє нам працювати навіть попри російські атаки. Дозволяє нам заряджати нашу техніку і працювати над матеріалами. Отже, поки Росія забиває собі цвяхи у кришку гроба, я, як і всі журналісти і громадяни України, продовжую працювати. Зокрема, для університету я пишу статтю про журналістську етику під час війни, зокрема про блюр трупів у матеріалах з зон бойових дій. Це пов'язано з моєю роботою, зокрема також, адже зараз я ще монтую фільм про воєнні злочини, скоєні Російською Федерацією в Україні. що має назву «Атака на цивільних». І тут багато роботи і багато складних питань. Загалом, якщо говорити про себе, то я цікавлюсь документальним кіно, і повномасштабне вторгнення, мабуть, зробило мене документалістом трохи раніше, ніж я сам на це розраховував. Адже зараз я не можу стояти осторонь і намагаюся з усіх сил фіксувати ті історичні події, які розгортаються у мене в батьківщині. Це мій внесок в перемогу, я вірю. І я вірю взагалі, що ця перемога буде за нами і вона близько. Всі ми в Україні так думаємо і ніщо не зламає нашу віру. Дякую вам всім.
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Коли настане день, закінчиться війна,
Девочка, у нас
там загубив себе, побачив аж до дна. Так лагідно і не пускай. Обійми мене, твоя весна прийде нехай.
Опа. Соня наречена.
Моя душа складає зброю.
We could see that no matter what are the circumstances, our Ukrainian colleagues are active and the universities are operating, educating new generations. I think it will be very needed soon in the future at the time of recovery. The economic analysis is essential because when we talk about losses, support, so we also think about the destruction of the economy and infrastructure and the assessment of costs that will be needed for recovery. The first presentation will be given by Professor Tetyana Lepeyko, who is the head of management and business department at the Simon Kuznets National University of Economics in Kharkiv, and also currently employed at Nicolas Copernicus University in Toru. The topic will be about the war economy of Ukraine. Hello, Tatiana.
Hello, Aranka.
Nice to have you with us. Could you give us some insight about the main facts and figures of the war economy of your country?
Yes, thank you very much for such possibility. In first of my words, I want to say thank you to Poland as a country who supports Ukraine, and also to the Nicolas Copernicus University who host us into the worst time in our lives. So to share the figures, I want to show you some slides which illustrate the main facts about Ukrainian economy. The situation in the economy is not so good. Actually, I use a statistic of the National Bank of Ukraine, of World Bank, and another review and interview from international organization. The consumer inflation in the Ukraine shows the big enough. It's 26 percentages, but the good fact that till the November and October, it's mostly not change and reach just 26 percentage. And this is lead to the increase in the extreme poverty rate, and unfortunately, the some layers of the population live on $5 per person per day, and number of the Ukrainians who live in such condition increased and still remain increasing. The situation with this Russian bombing is hard enough, and they are hitting the civil objects, our energetical infrastructure. So the statistic told us that 702 objects of critical infrastructure have been damaged, and also it's connected to the electric substations, bridges, roads, gas and power pipelines. And so there also was a big damage for the civilian infrastructure. For example, more than 3,000 educational institutions was suffering after the bombing, and some of them have totally be rebuilding. Also, the figures told us that we need more than $1.5 billion for restore the Ukrainian telecommunication sector. We can mention that the shortage of the electricity as a result of large-scale shelling of energy facilities lead to weakening of economic activity and reduction in production and increasing the business cost. So at the same time, there are some optimistic signs because the business tried to adapt to this situation, buying generators, shifting production to the nights, and so on. And also we can mention that the operation of the grain corridor, which gave possibility to supply some poverty country with their food, give some good perspective to Ukraine. Also, we can mention that the labor market also weakened because the nominal wages have approaches to the level of last year, but the real wages have significantly decreased because of inflation, and that's lead to some risk of the immigration. Also, some of the figures which can be connected to the budget deficit. So we can say that Ukrainian economy shrank by 1/3 in that years, and so this process can be remaining, and the figures told us that today the fund, when the fighting continues in the region that account for less than 15% of pre-war GDP. Such region like the Kharkiv, Sumy, which is close to the border of the Russia, is especially under this fighting. So we feel that we have a lot of damages, but some positive tendencies also will see. The businesses return to their native cities, and even our mayor of Kharkiv reporting that now the population of the Kharkiv reach 1.1 million, and pre-war was 2.5 million. So the people return to city. Yes. And if we told about dynamic of the economic, how it changed economic situation, we can mention that business is still working despite of the shortage of electricity limits. The work of both manufacturing and service sector we can see, and so we have the biggest reducing of the power system in November when the first massive attack was occurred. So after the facility reduction due to power support interruption, operating of the some industrial plants like chemical plants and food industry plants was decreased, but now they still remain to produce. And also there was the huge decrease in the housing industry because of this process. Also, at the same time, the energy crisis supports mining activity, and the military needs support engineering. They need to compensate for the destroyed public transport, the production of buses and trolley buses starting, and also restructuring of logistics, boosted production of trucks and grain transport platforms. The restoration of infrastructure supported the demand for domestic construction equipment and gasoline trucks. The industry adapted to the need of wartime, and the production of military goods, equipment, and drones start on the governmental enterprise, state-owned enterprise, and also the private enterprises. Also, we can mention that our agricultural sector also remain to work. And so they come to the harvest this year also, and you see that still, despite of the decreasing, we have the results, and Ukraine support their international obligation in war condition and use grain corridor to remain supply the poverty country with food. Together with the deoccupation of Kherson Oblast, which is a region of the grain and wheat production, so it gave us some input into the GDP, and also the occupied territories of Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Lugansk Oblast supported to increase the passenger transportation and this area. If we looking through the budget, that it was reporting that for the 2022, the state budget of Ukraine has the deficit or among them $911.1 billion hryvnias. And in the according to the State Treasury Service, in 2022, the general fund of the state budget received more than around 1.5 trillion hryvnias, and particularly almost 500 billion hryvnias went to the general fund of the state budget from the aids and grants. Also, G7 countries mobilized a total more than $30 billion for Ukraine by the 2023. And here on this slide, you see the country who contributed the Ukraine struggle with Russia the mostly, who support with the financial support, like the military, humanitarian, and financial support. Naturally, the biggest donor is the United States, and also the Poland, and is not the last. If we calculating the considering bilateral aid in terms of percentage of GDP of each country, some European countries are coming like on the top of this list, and on the first place in this rating is Estonia, which spent 1.1% of the GDP to help Ukraine. Latvia is 0.9% of GDP, and Poland 0.5% of GDP. And also the US have spent the 0.2% of GDP. With this, the help, financial help, and we can support that we still remain to fight. And also I should mention the like humanitarian support, because each region of Ukraine now have like foreign supervisors who take part into the rebuilding of the regions, like direct support. And for example, for Kharkiv, the countries who will take part in the rebuilding of the city is Japan, and also Britain, and also some other countries, but mostly now working the Great Britain with the Kharkiv, and even such famous architect like Norman Wiener developed the plan of the Kharkiv reconstruction, architectural reconstruction after the war. So we are not just stuck in this situation. We are looking forward to the continuous life under the war. Yes, it's briefly facts and figures.
Thank you, Tatiana. Of course, we will discuss a lot of issues connected with economic situation, as the economic situation and, of course, situation in the battlefield will shape the situation with migration, for example. Of course, we have also here in Poland huge spendings on refugees that we are hosting here. How do you think, as right now we are doing our best to integrate the citizens of Ukraine, mostly women, children, to our society, what is the possibility, what is the rate of, do you think, how probable it is that they will come back, and when to Ukraine?
Yes, let me show another slide. So with the figures, but it was very interesting, the review which was done by the European organization. And so it showed the migrants' tendencies. Firstly, I can say that today it's reporting that in Ukraine around 6 million people who are internally displaced, so who are transferring from the east region to the west region, and also around 8 million people who are migrants. Also, another interesting figures is that internally displaced people, they spend, like displaced person, around 200 days. So believe the 1 year of war and 200 days people are living into the another region. Another figures that told us that there are almost 10 waves of the migration from Ukraine to the Europe countries, but not to the just to Europe, to the foreign countries. And the tendencies for each this wave is different. The first waves, mostly people, you see here, the first graph is the people who willingness to return to Ukraine, and the second is the people who have possibility to stay in the Europe. And you can see the last one is column, the last wave of migration. The 78% of the people who want to return to Ukraine, and 71% from them can stay in Poland, in the foreign countries, and can have jobs and so on. And that's lead me to the conclusion that as me, who live also less than 1 year, but still in Poland, we all want to return to home. The mostly people want to return to home, but some of them, yes, they will integrate into the foreign countries. But as you say, mostly the migrants is women and children, and when they have their husbands, their relatives in Ukraine, they want to get home and to see the relatives there. That's why I think mostly of them really will return to Ukraine. But this experience of living abroad, the experience of surviving here, will bring them like a fortune in their life in Ukraine, because they can bring like European mind, European point of the view, and it's helped us to integrate European Union easily, because it changes the mentality.
Yes, thank you. Tatiana, it's quite easy to understand you, and we are very glad we can have you with us, thanks to the funds of the Polish National Agency of Academic Exchange Programs and the funds of Nicholas Copernicus University. But of course, I hope we will have very fruitful cooperation once you come back home, and
Sure.
I'm sure you would like that, so I wish you that it will be as soon as possible. Thank you for your presentation. We will talk about the economic situation more today. And now we go to the second presenter when we talk about survival. Of course, at times of war, this word is very important. But when we talk about economics, we go to businesses that are trying to survive in the circumstances that were explained by Tatiana, as the decline by 30% or more is really a disaster. So it's very hard to develop or even survive at that time. The second presenter will be Dr. Andrii Kotlyk, also professor in the Management and Business Department of the Szymon Kuzniec National University of Economics. The topic of the presentation will be connected with companies, and it is the management of Ukrainian firms under the conditions of war. Andrii, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your question. So, As for the main challenges of Ukrainian business faced during the war, probably the most important was that it was really unexpected. It sounds strange because since autumn, the leading media from the United States, from European Union, from other countries were warning that Russia is concentrating troops near the border of Ukraine, so it seems highly likely it will attack. But in Ukraine, most people, including those making decisions for business, didn't believe in that because we were having the conflict. We didn't call it war, but we had it still for 8 years before. And it wasn't, let's say, a big problem for Ukrainian business to develop itself during this conflict. So such an active invasion, full-scale invasion of Russian troops wasn't expected in Ukraine. And so when it happens on 24th of February, during the first week of the war, more than 70% of companies stopped their operations completely, according to the survey of Dwanter. They were not prepared to the situation. And of course, after the first shock changed to the willing to doing something, most of those companies came back to work. And for example, during the second week of the full-scale invasion, about 50% of companies weren't working, but in April only 20% of companies didn't work. So the number of companies who restored their activity increased. As for more specific challenges that our business faced, one of the most important during the spring and the beginning of summer was deficit of fuel. Because most of supplies before the war came from Belarus, partly from Russia, and so it became a big challenge. But with the help of switching to import from European Union, we fought this challenge. Yes, we addressed it, and in August it stopped being so sharp. As for another important challenge, it's rising inflation. As for the year 2022, official inflation in Ukraine is about 27%. And there are common factors, global factors that impacted this inflation, and additionally, exchange rate of our currency of Ukrainian hryvnia that dropped significantly. Another important challenge that were really actual both in the first months of the war and is still actual for most businesses is difficulties with logistics. A lot of companies along supply chains stopped their operations or were operating not in full. And so for those companies who are next in these supply chains, this became a problem. Also, not all the roads were good for transportation. There were problems with transportation by sea, and so all these problems are still actual for most of companies. Another problem that the same is active today and from the beginning of the war is decrease in demand for products and services that Ukrainian companies sell. First of all, we mean the decrease of internal demand, because millions of people left Ukraine, stopped buying something from Ukrainian business. Plus, Ukrainian businesses also started buying less. And also external demand, because of cutting of export channels from Ukraine, also decreased. And that is why a lot of companies suffered from that challenge since the beginning of the war and continue suffering now. As for some other challenges, they were more actual in the beginning of the war, but now they are not so. For example, lack of labor. In the beginning of the war, about 40% of companies stated such a problem, that they don't have enough labor force. But now this problem is not so sharp, because partly because refugees came back to Ukraine, returning back to work, partly because demand for labor force is decreasing now because of decrease in output of Ukrainian companies. The most actual problem which arose in autumn is lack of electricity supply because of Russian rocket attacks on electricity infrastructure of Ukraine, and up to 80% of Ukrainian companies state they face this problem. But actually, during the February, we see that this problem is not so sharp as it was before. Still, more than half of Ukrainian companies report they have troubles with that, but as many companies bought electric generators or changed the mode of work, it became not so difficult to deal with that than it was before. And if we are saying about how the companies deal with those troubles, so first of all, I want to say that Ukrainian companies, Ukrainian business in general, is very adaptive, because during the period of Ukrainian independence, we faced many crises. During the first 80 years, Ukrainian GDP in real terms decreased more than twice, for example. During the global financial crisis, Ukrainian GDP dropped by 15%. In the years 14, after the year 14, in the years 15, 16, we also had strong decrease in our GDP. But we adapted, we found ways how to survive and develop ourselves. And this ability to adapt helped Ukrainian business to adapt in this situation of war as well.
Thank you, Andrei. Do you think that this ability will create the situation that the expectations of businesses are positive for the coming year, or how the situation looks like in your opinion?
Yeah, thank you for your question. In short term, if to see the expectations of Ukrainian business, we can watch at National Banks of Ukraine index of business activity expectations. And this index equals 50 if positive and negative expectations are balanced. But in Ukraine, during all the war, it's less than 50. That means that more of businesses expect situation will go worse rather than it will become better. And mostly negatively, such sectors as construction sector and service sectors, they have the most negative expectations. So it's about short run, and that's because of challenges that Ukrainian business faces now. But as for perspectives, when the war ends, there are high expectations, and I share these expectations as well, about the fast recovery of Ukrainian economy, because of the low base, but also because of investments we expect to Ukrainian economy, and because of experience we have now in the, for example, military technology area, in IT, and so on.
For sure, there will be very high demands in many branches of industry. So
definitely,
yes. So the expectations can really come true, and I wish they will as soon as possible. As you see, I'm optimistic today, as this is how all the colleagues from Ukraine, when we designed this event, they asked me to keep it optimistic, not like a ceremony here commemorating this event. Thank you, Andrii, for your interesting insights from the business and managerial perspective. And we come back to issues connected with migration. Tatiana already mentioned the situation of migrants. And as Ukraine is the neighbor of Poland, we are very aware of that issue, not only in theory, but of course in practice. And I must proudly say that I'm really proud of the response of Poles to the situation on our border with Ukraine from the first hours of 24th of February 2022 and throughout the whole year. We have shown not only our support as a pure gesture, but we proved that what solidarity really means. Poles opened their hearts, homes, offered help from the very beginning, when thousands of refugees started to cross our border. We were the first responders in alleviating the pain, suffering of millions of those displaced or injured by the war. Instead of refugees, we tend to call them a guest. We share their enduring belief in freedom and justice. We support them on each level, from clear political statements and actions to integrating them in our societies. And they received all social rights and, of course, our friendship and care. Let me present you an interview with Tatiana Dębska, a woman entrepreneur from Toruń, born in Ukrainian Winnica, that organized very efficient system and later the whole organization that helped already thousands of people here locally and also in Ukraine. I visited the point of collecting support on Monday.
Witajcie. Dzisiaj chciałabym przedstawić Wam niezwykłą osobę. Osobę, której energia pozwoliła na realizację pomocy dla naszych gości z Ukrainy na niezwykłą skalę. Tatiana Dębska, prezes Fundacji Dobra dla Dobra.
Dzień dobry.
Witaj, Tatiano.
Cześć.
Możesz powiedzieć mi, jak to wszystko się zaczęło?
Zaczęło się od 2 postów na Facebooku w nowej grupie, którą założyłam dla swoich pracowników. Postanowiłam, że cała moja firma zaangażuje się w pomaganie osobom, które bardzo licznie przybywają do Polski.
Ja pamiętam, dzwoniłaś do mnie chyba od razu 24 lutego, poszukując lokalu na organizację pomocy. I to jest tutaj?
Na początku nie mieliśmy tego lokalu, zbieraliśmy pod biurem do naszego busa, do trafika i te dary napływały bardzo szybko i faktycznie potrzebowaliśmy magazynu. Jeszcze dodam, że już w ciągu doby w mojej grupie było już ponad 1300 członków, to byli torunianie, którzy bardzo chcieli pomagać.
No, rozwój tej sytuacji był niesamowity. I jakie formy przybrała Twoja pomoc?
Na dzień dzisiejszy mamy największy punkt pomocy w Toruniu. Mamy tutaj 600 metrów, mamy duży magazyn, gdzie mogliśmy przez cały czas przyjmować tą pomoc na dużą skalę. Przyjeżdżały tiry, przyjeżdżały duże samochody, z różnych krajów przybywała ta pomoc. Polacy przynosili tutaj dary, a my wydawaliśmy osobom, które już mieszkają w Toruniu i też wysyłaliśmy na Ukrainę.
A to były osoby, mieszkańcy Torunia, przedsiębiorcy, kto pomagał?
Tak, to były firmy, wszystkie firmy, największe firmy, małe firmy, osoby prywatne, wszyscy przynosili tą pomoc i też dzwonili do mnie, pytali, co przywieźć, co jest potrzebne i każdy, czym mógł, to też pomagał wyposażyć ten punkt. Dostaliśmy za darmo duże regały, dostawaliśmy tutaj wszystko, czego potrzebowaliśmy, to było przynoszone do punktu.
Na pewno pomoc taka rzeczowa to nie były jedyne formy pomocy, które zaoferowaliście. Co jeszcze?
Tak, na początku bardzo dużo osób jeździło na granicę, żeby odbierać osoby, które tam po kilka dni stały w kolejce, więc dziennie po kilka aut wyjeżdżało po to, żeby zabierać rodziny tutaj do Torunia. Ja koordynowałam też zakwaterowanie tych osób.
A jak zmieniła się Twoja działalność na przestrzeni tego minionego roku? Bo na pewno to był niesamowity roller coaster.
Tak. Ta działalność i ta forma pomocy zmieniała się każdy miesiąc. Pierwsze 3 miesiące ja byłam zupełnie wyjęta ze swojej pracy codziennej. My bardzo aktywnie w pierwszej kolejności trzeba było zakwaterować te osoby tutaj w Polsce. Kolejnym etapem było znalezienie pracy dla tych osób i znalezienie szkoły, przedszkoli dla dzieci. To trzeba było zrobić bardzo szybko, żeby te osoby po prostu zajęły się czymś, żeby stać ich było na utrzymanie i tym zajmowaliśmy się w pierwszej kolejności. Później cały czas my też poszukiwaliśmy pracy, zakwaterowanie dla tych osób i na dzień dzisiejszy to już jest taki etap, kiedy mniej wydajemy pomocy materialnej, natomiast skupiamy się na tym, żeby te osoby wyuczyły się, żeby poznały język, żeby przeważnie kobiety, których tutaj jest bardzo dużo, żeby kobiety rozumiały, w jaki sposób tu można założyć swój biznes, w jaki sposób można zacząć pierwszą działalność i jak funkcjonować w Polsce na własnych warunkach.
No właśnie i co dalej? Jaka pomoc jest obecnie po roku od wybuchu wojny nadal potrzebna?
Nasze stowarzyszenie zatrudnia psychologa. Psycholog codziennie udziela takich konsultacji, prowadzi grupowe takie spotkania, pomaga kobietom, młodzieży, dzieciom. To jest taka pomoc bardzo potrzebna. Ja na dzień dzisiejszy też skupiam się na pomocy przedsiębiorczym Ukrainkom, czyli kobiety, które w Ukrainie miały swój biznes, miały swoją działalność już lub zajmowały wysokie stanowiska. Ja teraz zbieram te kobiety po to, żeby one się wspierały nawzajem. Osoby, które chcą działać, może jeszcze nie mają odwagi, żeby działać, ale chciałyby zacząć własną działalność.
No na pewno jesteś bardzo dobrą inspiracją dla nich, ale jestem pewna, że nie robisz wszystkiego sama, więc jak ta cała akcja jest zorganizowana i jak ta organizacja też zmieniała się?
Na początku faktycznie zaczęliśmy jako grupa inicjatywna. Założyłam później szybko stowarzyszenie, które mogło przyjmować pomoc finansową, które gwarantowało, że te pieniądze, pomoc, która idzie, jest oficjalnie przyjmowana. Na dzień dzisiejszy to już jest zarejestrowana fundacja, która przyjmuje dary, która dostaje dotacje, dofinansowanie i też we współpracy z dużymi fundacjami realizujemy różne projekty.
A kto Wam pomaga? Czy to są nadal podmioty prywatne, osoby fizyczne, firmy, czy już raczej instytucje?
Mamy wpłaty regularne od osób prywatnych. Osoby prywatne tutaj przynoszą dary, które my rozdajemy gościom z Ukrainy mieszkającym w Toruniu. Mamy też fundacje i też firmy, które robią większe zakupy i my wysyłamy te dary do wojskowych na Ukrainę.
No właśnie, porozmawiajmy też o tych Twoich akcjach wyjazdowych. Zbieraliście środki na zakup karetki, co jeszcze z takich
Tak, my zbieraliśmy pieniądze na zakup samochodu dla wojskowych lekarzy, czyli Akademia Wojskowa, Medyczna Akademia Wojskowa w Kijowie wysyła swoich lekarzy, żeby zabierali rannych z frontu i oni potrzebowali samochodu, żeby jeździć, odbierać i nazbieraliśmy taką kwotę. Osobiście zawiozłam samochód na Ukrainę, przekazaliśmy i to było naprawdę, wszyscy byli bardzo nam wdzięczni za to.
Tatiana, czego Ci życzyć? Czego byś sobie życzyła? Czego byś życzyła Ukrainie, osobom, które tutaj przyjechały?
Wszyscy życzymy sobie zwycięstwa Ukrainy i wiemy, że Ukraina zwycięży, tylko żeby to stało się jak najszybciej. A nam i tutaj wszystkim Polakom w Polsce cierpliwości, hojności i wiary w to, że wszystko będzie dobrze.
Dziękuję bardzo.
This is how we do it in Poland. And now let's come back to our scientific issues. Now it's time for the colleagues from my home university, from my home faculty, so Faculty of Economic Sciences and Management. I would like to present my colleagues that represent the Department of Economics. And the first presenter will be Dr. Małgorzata Szczepaniak, who will elaborate the topic connected with refugees in Poland, probably from the different perspective, but for us at the university, equally interesting. Hello, Małgorzata.
Hello, Aranka. Thank you for inviting me. And I will have a pleasure to tell you some facts, some statistics about social and demographical issues connected with the Ukrainian refugees in Poland. So I would like to start with some general statistics connected with the numbers of the Ukrainian refugees in Poland. At first, it is worth to underline that United Nations Refugee Agency recorded more than 8 million refugees from Ukraine across Europe last week. This number is connected with some flows of Ukrainians. So for 1 year, more than 18 million Ukrainians crossed the borders from Ukraine, but more than 10 million have returned to Ukraine for this year. What is else important that almost 5 million refugees have registered for temporary protection programs in Europe. However, I think that it's from our Polish perspective, I wanted to underline some details connected with border crossings to both sides, Ukraine and Poland. So at first, I would like to say that almost 10 million Ukrainians crossed the Polish borders since the February last year. So what is important to note, you can see it on the left of the graphical illustration, that in the beginning of March last year, almost maybe about 140,000 Ukrainians crossed the Polish borders each day. When we consider the second direction, about 7.4 million Ukrainians came back to Ukraine during the last year. Finally, at present, about 1.5 million Ukrainians registered for temporary protection or similar national protection schemes in Poland. Important question is who are they, what is their gender, what is their age. So when the number of Ukrainian in Poland is considered in this perspective, it should be noted that most of them are in the economically productive age. So they are, when we consider a profile of Ukrainian refugee in Poland, it is women with small dependent children. And in general, about 66% of all refugees are women. And particularly, they are located in the Mazowieckie Voivodeship, Dolnośląskie, Śląskie, Wielkopolskie, Małopolskie, Łódzkie. So the regions in Poland that are maybe the most important for them when the places for to work were found. In comparison to other European countries, it should be noted that Poland is the country in which most Ukrainian refugees came. You can observe it on this slide that among this 2 million and 0.6 of refugees from Ukraine that were registered for temporary protection or similar national protection schemes, 1.5 million of them are in Poland. Among other European countries that also to which many Ukrainian refugees came, it should be noted that Germany is the country in which this moment presents about 900,000, and the Czech Republic that is almost 500,000. But this comparison gives us the clear picture that Poland is this country to which most Ukrainian refugees came. That's why I would like to present also some other details connected with the Ukrainian refugees profile. As I mentioned, it is a woman with small children. What else is important that is presented here on the basis of the survey conducted by the United Nations Refugee Agency. Those women who came to Poland from Ukraine are well educated. Half of them has higher education, and also the rest secondary and vocational education. And what is also important, before leaving the Ukraine, they were employed. What is important for their aspirations here in Poland to look for work. What is important for Polish people, it was a very big thing to help other people. It was really marvelous to observe how we helped. The willingness of Polish people was incredible, and almost everybody helped, starting from the children in the kindergarten, through primary schools, secondary schools, to the universities, places of our work. Everybody helped. And what kind of help was offered to Ukrainians in Poland? It can be divided maybe into several kinds. I started with the Polish people, with the citizens, the last column of the slide. So it was this help was connected with cash donations and mass in-kind donations. People shared many things connected with, starting from clothes to food and other things. Many individuals also offered the free transportation from borders to other places that Ukrainians could find help, and many Polish people were the volunteers. Another part of offer of help that was offered to Ukrainians in Poland was the central government and local authorities that was connected with the donations sent to Ukraine and the Polish-Ukrainian border, arranging free transportation within the city region, and arranging accommodation. And here I would like also to mention that more than 600,000 Ukrainian refugees also were offered the accommodation with Polish families, and those families were granted the cash allowance of the Polish government, about 40 zlotys a day for supporting Ukrainians with the accommodation. Ukrainians also received some cash allowance. It was once 300 zlotys. And what is important when we consider this help is that in March last year, Polish government also set the special act, which Polish special act, which gave some very important rights to Ukrainian citizens staying in Poland. And under those rights were legality of state. What does it mean? It means that Polish government gave right to obtain a PESEL number. PESEL number, it is the personal unique identifier that made Ukrainian refugees able to be granted some certain benefits or register also even a company. They can start running their own business in Poland. The special number also gave right to obtain the trusted profile, which make them able to to deal with official formal issues online, and also possibility to file an application to legalize the immigrant stay in Poland. When financial support is considered, as I mentioned, it was this one-off cash benefit, also the accommodation possibilities in Polish families that were also granted this governmental help, but also access to the family benefits. Considering also the family benefit 500 plus that make the Ukrainians able to get this cash allowance each month, 500 zlotys for each dependent child, which is below 18 years old. Other social welfare, financial and non-financial aid that was given to the Ukrainians is connected with the possibility to take part in the Polish healthcare system, as well as the free psychological help and free transportation to some places of accommodation and social welfare centers. Considering the employment, it is very important that Ukrainians in Poland had right to work in Poland, but as well right to register in the as an unemployment person to receive the benefits. This had really big consequences also for the Polish economy.
Thank you, Małgorzata. What do you think, if you should name one big challenge right now in the field, what would it be for Poland?
Yes, as I mentioned, so big number of the Ukrainian refugees in Poland make us to face some challenges, some risk and opportunities. Maybe among the risk, I would say that two most important from my perspective is that the cost of supporting the Ukrainian refugees is relatively big, and maybe it's not offset by the tax revenues that are connected with those people Ukrainians who work in Poland. Another important consequence is the upward pressure on the housing prices because of the growing demand for the renting the flat. The prices of renting the flat was increased, and that's why also for Polish people, Polish families who used to rent a flat, it is now more difficult and more expensive. However, on the other side, there are also some opportunities. I think that from the economic point of view, it should be mentioned that it can be the possibility that GDP growth will be connected with the increasing number of labor force and working people, because it should be also added that Ukrainian refugees allowed to reduce the labor shortage, and this may have a consequence to the productivity and labor market situation.
Thank you very much. And now we stay with the economic issues, as the next presenter will be professor from the Department of Economics of the Nicholas Copernicus University, from my home faculty, as I mentioned before, Michał Moszyński. And we will come back to this view of the consequences of war. We heard about the situation in Ukraine. Now the picture probably will be more general. Welcome, Michał.
Welcome. Thank you very much for your invitation and kind words. Exactly, I want to sketch more broad picture of economic consequences of war. So let me start with famous British economist John Maynard Keynes, who has written an article just after the First World War in 1919. It was titled Economic Consequences of Peace. So in his famous essay, he argued for a more generous peace, but not out of a desire for justice, but for the sake of the economic well-being of all Europe. So in my presentation, I will try to revert the question and ask about the economic consequences of war. So it seems to me that we are living in the period of multiple crises, because we had economic crisis, pandemic crisis, social political crisis, and war seems to be a culmination of these negative trends. And if we look at the history, the war has always been a time of change, and wars, they used to mark the end of a given era. So we can think now of the world before and after the war. The war is not over, but the war will be not the same as it used to be. So for me, the war seems to be a symbolic end of the era of unfettered globalization, but also end of dreams about the end of history. So the famous thinker Fukuyama wrote his famous essay about the end of history. So for him, he came to a conclusion that liberal democracy is a final stage of political and economic system. So in the evolution, so this is the final stage, but his thesis proved wrong, and we can see the history is back. So the war is a geopolitical trigger. We have some changes in the liberal world order, and through the perspective of economy, we can say that the war is a huge tragedy, the loss of capital, of human capital, of machinery, buildings, equipment, and so on. We have to spend a lot of money for armies, and we could spend the money better for healthcare or other goods. So in the economy, we in the textbooks we have a famous example of such choice made in the national economy. It's a choice between butter and guns. So let me show you the scheme with the trade-off. So we have butter and guns, and it seems to me that we travel a bit in time in this scheme. So in 2022 we start new travel. So we will be producing more guns, I suppose. So we have to resign of butter, and other goods, other consumption. And this example is very exploited in the literature and in the economic books, and also by politicians. So Margaret Thatcher in the 70s, she said, the Soviets put guns over butter, but we put almost everything over guns. And it seems to me this is up to date, this sentence. And other famous example was the speech given by American President Eisenhower in the 50s. And let me cite one sentence because he referred to this very trade-off with specific examples. So Eisenhower said, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold are not clothed. The world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, and the hopes of its children. And the president gave some examples, how much cost one heavy bomber, and he made a comparison. We could build, for example, schools in 30 cities or 2 electric power plants and so on. I think this calculation is still relevant and still up to date because we can read in the newspaper one tank cost about $5 million or even more. So this is a huge amount of money. And my country, so Poland, decided to spend more and more money for national defense. So it should be in the future 4% of GDP. So this is really a huge amount of money. But we have, it seems to me, we have no other choice. So going to the question of economic cost, the problem is how to calculate this cost. So methodological question, because we have very different kinds of cost of war. We have economic costs, we have military, environmental, social, political costs. So it's not easy, or maybe it is even impossible to calculate and assess this cost precisely. And then we have sum up all the costs. So we have to wait, we have to decide what to calculate. And so I will name only some examples, and I'm not going to go into detail. So on the one hand, we have direct visible costs like human deaths, growing expenditures, destruction of land, building, infrastructure, and machinery equipment. And on the other hand, we have indirect cost like impact on society, like migration, as my colleague told before, or humiliation of people, extremism, political tensions. It's not easy, or it's even impossible to calculate. But let me go for a minute to some channels, economic channels, how the war can influence our welfare. So the first impression to me is international trade. So normally international trade is a source of welfare. So consequently, we use trade as a weapon, and we employ economic sanctions. So they have adverse effects on welfare. They have to be painful to work. So we try to influence our enemy, but on the other hand, we have to suffer also. And we know they are not 100% effective. Other channel is energy shock, and with its effect on inflation. But we have some good news, because we get to know we have to accelerate with ecological transformation, and we are more aware of necessity of green transformation. Other channel is problem with supply chains. So the firms, they have to build up accumulation of reserves, buffers, they relocate the production, but we know about shortages of food and some problems in the third world, in Africa and other countries with food. Migrations were already mentioned, and what can I present also is lost economic output. So we have some economic outlooks and assessment how the economic growth will be in the future, and we have to calculate the slowing down of economic growth, and this is costly. So the OECD published an assessment about the cost. It is about, if we make a comparison, in 2 years we will lose output generated by the entire French economy. So let's imagine the French economy disappear. So this is really huge amount of money. Okay, we can give some details like money spent on tanks, on weapon, on other military expenses. So Russia lost about $90 billion. So this is huge amount of money, but this is destroying of capital. And in the final sense, I think we will pay with this war. And another picture. So the choice, open and closed economy. So it seems to me we are traveling from open economy here to closed economy somewhere here. So the sanctions, we are trying to close the world a bit, and this is costly. So my impression, very broad analysis, and we have to wait with the details for the end of the war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michał. For sure, there will be a lot of results and consequences that we cannot even foresee. I hope not all will be so bad. But of course, there are like changes at that time. I've read the sentence by Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, who remarked that there are 3 shifts in global trade right now. One from dependence to diversification, from globalization to regionalization, and this what you mentioned, the efficiency versus security. Now we are talking much more about security, and it's quite understandable in those times. And of course, it is very costly. Thank you very much. We stay in the field of economics. The next presenter will be also the professor of economics. Let me now welcome Professor Matthew Nagler, who is the only representative of our partner from the US, City University of New York. We intend to have more presentations from colleagues from the US later in the year, so we will for sure talk more about the issues from this perspective. Matthew, could you present us your remarks concerning US response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine as you see it 1 year later? The floor is yours.
Okay, I'd like to thank Aranka and Nicholas Copernicus University for inviting me here today. So I'd like to just give some brief remarks. It's really, sort of an extraordinary moment that we're in. I just wanted to comment a little bit on the U.S. response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and really, at this extraordinary time. So it's not just an extraordinary moment, but really it's been quite an extraordinary year. It's been a terrible year in quite a lot of ways, but it's also been a very remarkable year, and not just for Ukraine and Poland and the region, I think, but really worldwide. And I want to comment on some of what some of the effects have been as far away as the United States. So really, what I think has been quite remarkable is that prior to the invasion of Ukraine 1 year ago, U.S. support for Ukraine's resistance against Russia was really sort of lukewarm. It was not, people were not very excited about supporting Ukraine. But after the invasion, really everything changed. And you see really a dramatic change in public opinion. And it's something that you notice just being here in the United States, everywhere that you go. Talking to people, seeing their support just in people's hometowns, it's been quite dramatic. So culturally, we've seen this really near unanimous coming together of Americans behind Ukraine, which is especially remarkable as you probably know, we have at this time a country that's really quite divided politically. There are, between left of center and right of center, Democrats on one side and Republicans on the other. And so it's when anything can cause Americans to come together as much as this issue has, it's really, truly extraordinary. And I think what it reflects is the straightforward framing of the Ukraine-Russia war as a war in which there was a clear good side and a clear evil side. At least that's the way Americans have come to see this since the invasion occurred. And so it's not hard for Americans to rally to Ukraine and to feel solidarity with the people of Ukraine. So that was really quite remarkable. Now, politically, though, the picture is a little bit more subtle. And I think also what has happened between the beginning of the invasion and now is also I think worthy of taking note. And so I wanted to present this slide with some data from the Pew Research Center. And what it shows is that in the first beginning of the war, in February of 2022, there was really bipartisan support in the U.S. for Ukraine. Both Democrats and Republicans supported Ukraine in the war. But now we're seeing that while support by Democrats remains strong, support by Republicans does seem to be wavering somewhat. I mean, what I see, if you take a look at these charts, you'll notice on the right two charts show the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And I think most notable here is not, I don't think that much has changed among Democrats, but I think you do see a fairly significant change among Republicans. But I want to sort of caution that a lot of that doesn't have to do with what's going on in Ukraine. A lot of it has to do really with what's going on in the US. And what you have in the US is a Democratic president, President Biden, and his administration, who are completely behind Ukraine. And so over time, the Republicans who are in opposition need to find ways of distinguishing themselves from the Democrats and from President Biden. And so it is natural what we're seeing, this resistance that is now building up, has resulted in that softening of support among Republicans. And so I think that's really the key factor. But now, nevertheless, I think we face some critical questions right now. I've tried to articulate the questions here. Will the U.S. support for Ukraine remain strong? Will U.S. government actions match popular sentiment? So, if you go into my hometown, you see that people they're still flying Ukraine flags. So that's one thing, but will the military support continue? Also, as you may know, we have a new Congress at the beginning of this year, which is now slightly under the control of Republicans. Previous year, it was under the control of Democrats. And so I think it's worth our asking, is that going to mean any dramatic changes in our policy with regard to this war? And then also in 2024, when we have a presidential election, if there is somebody new replacing President Biden, could that mean change for the US policy? So these, I think, are very important questions for us to ask at this time. I think we cannot take for granted that US support for Ukraine in this war will continue so strongly as it has. But it's going to be a year where we really have to watch this carefully. So again, thank you, and I appreciate being given the opportunity to give these remarks.
Thank you, Matthew. Especially those critical questions are important here. As we heard from the colleagues from Ukraine that they will be counting on the international support. And we know that the damage in infrastructure right now exceeded $2 billion. So everyone can imagine how much money will be needed, and for sure they will not deal with this on their own. So anyhow, probably we will all help, but the questions are still valid, how the situation will look like in future. Yeah, I'm sure we will meet in this year to talk about the situation, as this is still a very current topic. I remember your visit in Poland last year, so you are one from your colleagues that were brave to visit us at that time, because there were a lot of questions concerning the situation in Poland and the safety in Poland. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for your insights today. Dear viewers, it's time to close our event. I would like to thank all the presenters and the representatives of Dobra dla Dobra Foundation for their help and support in organizing this event. Thank you for bringing your expertise and experience around and engaging in such exchange of knowledge. We wanted to make the presentations not so theoretical, not so scientific, to allow the general public to watch the video, but I really hope we will soon also meet at scientific conferences and panels to discuss the issues connected with economic recovery of Ukraine. I wish this to us all with all my heart. Special thank you is to all of the producers and people who were engaged in organizing the event. First of all, special thank you to our producer and media guru, Mariusz Lewandowski, representing Nicolaus Copernicus University. Thank you goes also to his assistant, Vladimir Tkachenko, for providing the necessary translation from Ukrainian language. And thank you for all the colleagues and students from Simon Kuznets National University of Economics in Kharkiv. Splendid job in such difficult times. Thank you to all my colleagues in the US for providing the insights. Especially, I would like to thank Professor Juan Carlos Mercado, the Dean of the Division of Interdisciplinary Studies at the City College of New York, who supported us in the organization of this event. And of course, thank you to all the presenters from my home university. I would like to encourage all the viewers, especially colleagues that conduct research in the field of interest similar to the field that we are presenting, to contact us if you wish to be involved in our future events. So let me conclude by thanking once again all participants for your time, valuable insights. I look forward to welcoming you again. Goodbye.